Hello everybody, this is Wise Exotics. I'm your host Trevor. Today we're going to be doing a discussion video on Nepenthes, Robcantleyi, truncata, and nebularum, also known as the truncated trio of Nepenthes, as we currently know them. I'm not an authority figure. I'm not somebody who's telling you this is the way things are. This is the information as I know it and understand it and have researched. So I'm presenting you with the information. You can do what you will with it and take it as you will, or go do your own information, hunting. The articles and information, excuse me, on these species are pretty varied, especially Robcantleyi and nebularum are more recently described and argued back and forth to death, and there's kind of a divide in the community. So it's a big gray area. I'm simply giving you the information as I know it. So take it as you will. This is the most current information as I understand it. So if a new article comes out, please look above on the when this video was posted date and don't just throw a rage comment about it being outdated or whatever. Just check the information beforehand, please. Thank you. So these species are primarily only found to my understanding, in the Philippines. Truncata here, which is this larger one, has these large truncated leaves, which is this wing form, as you can see it. It is quite popular in cultivation and in collections. A lot of people like it for its vigorousness and growth. They can pretty much grow anywhere. A lot thought they were initially only a lowland species, but they found that they're very hardy in nurseries and can handle a variety of ranges. So take it as you will. Now, truncata can be found all over on different islands. There's a bunch of different forms, colors, and shapes, green, whatnot, but one thing they all have in common is they're usually pretty big pitchers with these nice wing shapes. So that's pretty straightforward. Now we're going to go over to the island Mindanao, which is also in the Philippines. On the southeastern part, they discovered a species called Robcantleyi, which is these two. Basically, these are both seed-grown. That is also seed-grown truncata. This is two nebularum, kind of in either Siamese twins or a basal. I'm not quite sure. Robcantleyi here were discovered on the southeastern part of the island Mindanao. A logging company decided to destroy the forest. These are epiphytes. They live in the trees. So they kind of killed a bunch of them. Sad. So quite a few nurseries decided to try to save the species through preservation means. Took some out of the wild, aka poaching, and in a good way, tried to bring up the species numbers through breeding in nurseries. A bunch of them were successful. Borneo Exotics, to my understanding, had 3,000 germinated seeds on its first try. So it is critically endangered in the wild, but they are very easily and readily available in cultivation. So take that as you will. Now, Robcantleyi, as mine are very tiny, you can even see on the smaller one, has kind of a, if the camera focus, has a flared pitcher, truncated leaves. The leaves are not like truncata, which have this kind of fuzz all over them and they're darker. They're a lot brighter, rubbery, and they don't really color up the stem in the same form. They also are very sensitive to water. That's what this coloration here is. It's actually a blister. Putting water droplets on this species will cause blistering. So take that as you will. Don't let it sit in water. Don't let water pool on the leaves. That's just my first little tidbit of information and hint when growing this species in your collection. They're very slow to grow. They are very sensitive, as I said, to water. They're okay with lighter light, darker light. They really don't seem to care. Usually their pictures can be anywhere from red, darker colored with green stripes down the middle, as you can see here, as well as very flared. It can also be found kind of like truncata to have green coloration. Now, as the species was very reduced, they decided to try to hunt some more down, see if there was another population somewhere on the island. They went to Mount Hafiz first, and then later to an undisclosed mountain that was later disclosed as Mount Mayo. The Mount Hafiz group, people decided to grab and find this species they found as an epiphyte looked very similar to Robcantleyi, a little smaller, so they decided it was just a variance form, kind of like minima and maxima were initially. So they decided to take a bunch of them and breed them and sell them as Robcantleyi. Not the best when you don't wait till they're fully grown, in my opinion. They went over to the other mountain, Mount Mayo, and again grabbed a bunch of them, started breeding them. Now, A lot of the nurseries sell the ones from Mount Mayo now under the name of nebularum, which was later what the species was described as. Now, as you can see here, the species nebularum has darker leaves similar to truncata, pictures that are similar to Robcantleyi, and it actually has fuzz on the leaf, a lot more than truncata. Even in the light, you can kind of see the fuzziness all over and around, and it goes down the stem and up. The pictures are also significantly darker, as you can see here. This one's almost like black, and this one's kind of reddish purple. It's just how it is. Now, because there are two here, I feel very confident that this is a nebularum. Nebularums typically in cultivation and even in private collections, such as my friend Josh has one from Mount Mayo, can basal early. So that's a good indication that it's actually a nebularum. The other factor is it has a U shape up here, darker stem, darker body, the difference of leaf. As you can see, this has a very bright leaf on the two Robcantleyi. No fuzz at all, very defined wing shape. Nebularum doesn't have that. Another defining feature is the flower. So the flower on nebularum versus truncata and even Rob, these have huge flower spikes. The ones from the nebularum, however, are very tiny and even thought not as matured as the truncata, which was rather interesting reading up on that. They were later defined as a separate species, so all the ones that were sold as Robcantleyi later have to be renamed as nebularum. This has happened before with mollas, fusca, and stenophilia, if I recall correctly. So it's not like this is the first time it's happened. Take it as you will. It'd be formally Robcantleyi or whatever, or formally fusca mollas. That was a whole other thing. Just go look up McPherson's video on red fern if you want to have more information on that. Now we're going to fast forward a bit. So Mount Hafiz, Mount Mayo were the locations that nebularum were found on. It was thought that later truncata, as a hypothesis, not a theory, because this was never proven, the hypothesis was that Robcantleyi was possibly a natural hybrid of nebularum x truncata, squat, not the specific truncata, but a squatter truncata. They did some breeding and cultivation with that hypothesis in mind. The ones that came from that germination didn't look anything like Robcantleyi, so they kind of trashed that hypothesis. So then the theory was it's an F2 hybrid. Now, if you don't know what that means you took, say, nebularum truncata here bred and made these two, Robs, F1s. We bred the F1s together and made an F2. That'd be a next generation. So they thought the second generation of this would be a second-gen hybrid, because Robs in cultivation can actually breed true every time. They look the same, and their behavior and growth pattern are the same, whereas nebularum and truncata have separate and different growth habits. So they thought it was just a middle ground, even though it doesn't seem to be that way. The hypothesis, once again, was published and pushed out. They bred it. They did an F2 of these two. And again, it doesn't look anything like it. So, yeah. So a lot of people will think that, oh, truncata x Rob or Neb is a Rob. No, that's not actually true. Neither is an F2 at this point, because per what was discovered, breeding them and doing research on them, they don't look anything alike from those hybrids. So it was once again broken up and named as a separate species. So currently, at this time of this video, truncata, Robcantleyi, and nebularum are thought to all be cousin species. Now, because of Robcantleyi's, as you can see here, this flare they get and the size of the flare is similar to that of my Veitchii over there. As you can see, one right there, have this huge defined flared picture thing. It's actually thought that Robcantleyi is a relative species to Veitchii. It might be the bridge between Veitchii and truncata. That's one hypothesis. Personally, growing them here and just looking at them, you can already tell that there are differences. Nebularum seem to be sensitive to water, but not as much as Rob. So as an indication test, I put a droplet on my Robs when I first get them to make sure that they're verified, even if they look the same. It could be, as I said, a nebularum accidentally sold. So I did that on my first nebularum over here on its leaf. It had a little sensitivity to water, but the other leaves didn't really care. So it's not as sensitive. It still doesn't like water droplets on it. Truncata, to my understanding, doesn't care. It hasn't had an issue either way. I'm actually quite looking forward to this new picture mine is developing. This truncata was actually bred between two green truncatas and to my understanding, and it made this kind of red green picture as its newest picture, which really threw me for a loop because I've had this for almost a year plus now, and it decided to go from green to red all of a sudden. And I'm like, okay, that was new. It still has stripes, but it's just red on the upper half of the picture, which was very weird. Um, yeah, very weird. I discovered that my nebularum here is actually, like I said, two plants in one, which was that was a lucky buy of mine. This one is from the Mount Hoffus group that was originally thought to be Robcantleyi. It's not. They made a mistake. Things happen. So it was later renamed to be Nebularum. This is seed grown. All these are seed grown. Nebularum are not in critically endangered. They are invulnerable to my understanding, if I recalled. Robcantleyi, because they are a separate species, are still labeled as critically endangered. This is a similar thing that actually occurred with Edwardsiana villosa macrophilia, which I have those in my collection. Villosa are thought to not be vulnerable or anything. They're totally Villosa are fine in the wild. Edwardsiana are a little vulnerable because of poaching, and they're highly desired. They're just supposed to be very sensitive. Mine doesn't seem to care what I do with it, and it grows perfectly fine. Um, Macrophilia was thought to actually be a middle between the two, and then they discovered it wasn't. Anywho, if anybody has any questions, comments, or want to discuss this, please post or send me some chats on Instagram. I have Wise Exotic as my Instagram account, Little Green Owl. I'm quite happy growing these species myself. I would like to get a Mount Mayo nebularum myself, even a cutting. For those of you who are looking at the AWs, supposedly, to what I know, the AW line, only 3 and 6 are thought to be pure nebularum. The rest are thought to be truncata, ex nebularum hybrids. That's just what I have read. The Mount Hoffus group, similar things have occurred too. So we'll wait and see how that works. It's all about the flower spike. I know Red Leaf Exotics does the Exotica plant sales, and those are the ones from Mount Mayo. Those are seed grown. They're usually around $400. So if you don't want your wallet to cry, just wait and see till they're lower. I know Dom at Red Leaf Exotics is very excited. This year he did announce that they have a bunch of flowering nebularum and they are breeding them. So the hope is that he can do his own in-house nebularum from Mount Mayo. So we'll see how those go. So yeah, if anybody has questions or comments or concerns, please, send them my way. Trevor out.